The Carthuan conclave gathered beneath the 3 crimson moons as they wheeled slowly across the sky, staining the mountaintop in the color of fresh blood. The plateau of echoes, sacred for over 1,000 cycles, trembled faintly with the hum of ancient machinery buried beneath layers of volcanic stone. Obsidian pylons stood arranged in a perfect circular lattice, each etched with spiraling runes older than the conclave itself. Their faces gleamed like dark mirrors, reflecting the robed figures now moving carefully between them. Tonight, every seer capable of standing had come. They had no choice left. The void swarm had devoured the outlying colonies, leaving nothing but drifting clouds of biological dust. One by one, their allies had abandoned them, some fleeing, some surrendering, some simply disappearing without a trace. The conclave's military council was gone, absorbed into the front lines and annihilated within a single turning of their world's rings. The Carthuan were a scholarly people, not warriors. Their weapons were words, ideas, engines of light and knowledge. Against the swarm, such things meant less than vapor. Desperation had driven them to this ritual, to a legend long dismissed as myth. Seer Vok stood at the edge of the circle, clutching his staff so tightly his claws left grooves in the wood. His frilled crest kept fluttering with nervous tremors. Around him, the other seers murmured prayers in low harmonics, the kind meant not for gods, but for the cosmos itself, for the equations and energies that shaped galaxies. Vok swallowed, his voice barely a whisper. It must work. The legends say the beings of this death world were born in fire and raised in danger. Creatures of unbreakable will, strengthened by a planet that tried to kill them every dawn. If any species can survive the void swarm, it is they. Seer Thyrix, older and far more cynical, stepped forward with a rasp. Legends also say these Deathworlders wage war as easily as breathing. Summoning such beings may doom us before the swarm even arrives. Better to risk a monster, Vok replied softly, than certain extinction. The chant began. Voices rose, 28 seers, harmonizing through 3 resonant frequencies, weaving the ritual into existence. The obsidian pylons awakened, their runes filling with electric blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat, slow at first, then quickening as the air thickened, vibrating with raw dimensional friction. Sparks of plasma leapt between pylons, crackling arcs that burned holes in the air. Vok stepped into the center of the circle. The dimensional anchor, a floating prism of crystalline energy, hovered over a carved dais. It spun faster with every passing breath, its facets displaying glimpses of other worlds, oceans boiling under red suns, forests filled with predators of impossible size, barren landscapes where storms of knives raged. Deathworld visions. The conclave stared, entranced and terrified. The anchor cracked once, twice, then split fully open, unleashing a blinding cascade of energy that tore a hole in the fabric of reality. A dimensional aperture yawed open above the plateau, swirling with violent colors that defied logic. Winds howled outward, ripping stone from the mountaintop and flinging it into the sky. Smaller seers stumbled. One fell to his knees, shielding his face from the blast. The moons themselves seemed to flicker. Vok braced himself as the ritual reached its apex. Steady, stay in formation. Something moved inside the rift. Not a figure. Not a weapon. A shadow. Long, angular, metallic. The conclave gasped as the object emerged, a colossal shape of silver and black plating, its hull illuminated by thousands of white running lights. It shifted, clearing the aperture as if stepping through a doorway made for giants. A ship. A warship. A human warship. Its engines roared like a captured star. Massive thrusters flared, sending shockwaves rippling across the valley. Then another ship followed, and another. Dozens, hundreds. A roaring cascade of Terran vessels, carriers, cruisers, destroyers. Ships whose functions the Carthune could not guess. The fleet was so vast that starlight vanished behind them, smothered by armor and steel. "By the moons," whispered Therix, "we have not summoned warriors. We have summoned an army." The lead, dreadnought larger than their capital city, hovered directly above the plateau. Its hull was marked with symbols, some in alien tongues, others in strange geometric patterns. Two words dominated the plating along its prow, vast and unmistakable. UNITEDTERRA, a species none of them had ever met, except in myth. The Deathworlders, the humans, creatures said to survive volcanic winters, predators the size of trees, toxic landscapes, and gravity that crushed weaker species outright. Sirvok fell to his knees in awe. We summoned them, the champions of the death world," they answered. A low hum vibrated the plateau. The dreadnought's belly cracked open, revealing a glowing communications array that bathed the ground in white radiance. A voice thundered from above, echoing across the mountains with absolute authority. "This is Admiral Leona Grayson of the United Terran Vanguard. You have activated a forbidden class dimensional beacon. Identify yourselves immediately and explain why we were pulled halfway across the galaxy." The seers trembled under the weight of that voice, a voice carved from steel and storms. Voke forced himself upright, claws digging into the stone for support. He looked up at the massive dreadnought blotting out the sky. "We are the Carthuan Conclave," he called out, his voice cracking. "We summoned you because we are dying. The void swarm consumes our worlds. We hoped to call champions, but we did not expect." He gestured helplessly at the overwhelming fleet. This. Silence followed. The humans did not respond right away. They simply hovered in the sky, unmoving, unreadable, like gods judging whether a mortal plea was worth hearing. In that silence, the Conclave realized the truth. They had not summoned salvation. They had summoned the most feared beings in known myth, the Deathworlders, the humans. The lead dreadnought, the Horizon Breaker, hovered above the plateau of echoes, massive enough to blot out both moons. Its hull gleamed under the dim light of the Carthune moons, armored panels bristling with weapons, energy conduits glowing faintly like veins of lightning. From its underbelly, hangars and dropships unfolded, their sharp silhouettes slicing the sky like predatory birds awoken from millennia of slumber. The sound of their engines rolled across the plateau like thunder made solid, shaking the seers to their knees. Then a voice spoke, a voice so sharp, so commanding that it cut through the fear and awe like a sword. "This is Admiral Leona Grayson of the United Terran Vanguard. You have opened an uncontrolled dimensional breach into Terran space. Identify yourselves immediately and explain your actions before we assume hostile intent." Every seer froze. Even the stalwart Voke felt his claws tremble. The humans did not sound impressed. They sounded annoyed, and that made them infinitely more terrifying. Seer Volk forced himself forward, bowing low. Admiral, we meant no harm. Our worlds are being consumed. The void swarm approaches. He swallowed, the words caught in his throat. We summoned champions. Warriors of your world, born from a planet of death and survival. We hoped perhaps you would help. Grayson's eyes, displayed across the massive holographic comm window, scanned the plateau with sharp, calculating precision. Behind her, the bridge crew moved with mechanical efficiency, monitoring sensors, checking weapon systems, coordinating fleets with a single glance. Each human looked as if born to fight wars on planets that had already tried to kill them. You summon Deathworlders on an uncontrolled dimensional beacon? She said, her tone dry. That's bold. And dangerous. Very dangerous. Volk hesitated. Boldness had never been a word he had associated with humans. Survival, yes. Adaptability, yes. Boldness, perhaps. But to open a rift and drag an entire fleet halfway across the galaxy, that was audacity beyond comprehension. Admiral, we are dying, Volk continued, his voice shaking. The void swarm, its power is beyond anything our sciences can defend against. We sought help, and we have summoned you. Grayson allowed a faint, humorless smile. You didn't summon soldiers. You summoned humans. Volk's stomach twisted at the implication. He had expected a handful of warriors, maybe a few elite soldiers. He had not expected what hovered above the plateau now. A full battle fleet, ships capable of planetary bombardment, dropships designed to deploy Marines into hellish environments without breaking stride, vessels of destruction and precision the Conclave could not even conceptualize. The ground beneath them vibrated as the horizon breaker adjusted its position. Its massive senses locked onto the plateau, scanning the seers and their machines. Volk swallowed again. This was not a negotiation. This was a test. A species that could survive death worlds and cosmic disasters did not wait to ask questions they observed, and then decided instantly whether a threat was worth annihilating. Then the distant thunder began, the rumble of the void swarm approaching. Blackened, twisted organic ships, pulsating with grotesque life, tore through the atmosphere on a collision course with the Conclave's world. Tendrils of living biomass tore forests apart, carving canyons as they crashed. The swarm was merciless, fast, and overwhelming. The Carthons screamed. The humans did not. Grayson's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. All Terran units, combat stance, engage. And the fleet obeyed. Ships released swarms of gunships that streaked like comets through the sky. Rail cannons and plasma lances fired in perfect synchrony, striking the swarm with surgical precision. Dropships descended, Marines dropping from orbit in armored exosuits, their landing impacts shattering mountains. Seer Volk and the other seers watched in stunned silence. They had called for help. They had expected champions. They had received gods of war. And the battle was only beginning. The sound of the approaching swarm was unlike anything the Conclave had ever experienced. A low, wet, keening vibration rolled across the plateau, as if the planet itself were shivering in terror. Shadows fell across the mountains as massive, pulsing ships of living flesh tore through the clouds, their hulls slick and black, adorned with teeth, spikes, and strange, writhing eyes. They exuded heat and stink, burning the air with acidic mists that left stone hissing and crackling under the sky. Carthon trembled at the sight. Entire sections of the mountainside collapsed under the shock waves. Seer Vok gripped the edge of the ritual circle, clawed hands leaving deep grooves in the obsidian stone, his mind racing with equations that could not account for this horror. "By the moons," whispered Seer Thyrix, voice shaking. They will consume everything." The humans did not flinch. Not the ships, not the marines, not the dreadnought above. The horizon breaker pivoted slightly, its massive hull rotating like a predator assessing prey. Gunports opened, energy flares traced along armor seams, and dropships unfolded with mechanical grace. Grayson's voice rang across every open channel, calm and resolute. "All Terran units, engage at will. Remember, these are not myths. They are dangerous, but they will not survive the organized firepower of the Vanguard." And the Terrans moved as one. From orbit, carriers released hundreds of gunships that streaked like meteors into the thickening atmosphere. Rail cannons fired in synchronized volleys, their magnetic tracks sending shells faster than the human eye could follow. Plasma lances ignited, ripping through the thick hulls of swarm dreadnoughts with searing precision. Explosions erupted across the sky, clouds of black biomass evaporating under the pure firepower. On the ground, Marines dropped from orbit in powered exosuits, the descent pods hitting the stone with the force of small tectonic events. Each Marine emerged fully armed, weapons humming with energy, movement fluid and deadly. A void swarm titan towering, sinewy, and screaming with psychic rage charged the plateau, crushing everything in its path. A single Marine stepped forward, facing the titan without hesitation. Her weapon braced, armor scarred from previous battles across other death worlds. She fired. The titan fell. A second titan tried to charge. Another Marine, younger but no less fearless, unleashed a volley of energy projectiles, cutting the creature's limbs like a sculptor carving stone. The swarm shrieked, a chorus of organic pain and rage that vibrated the mountains and made the very air itself seem to vibrate with panic. But the humans pressed forward, methodical, calculating, unafraid. They moved with a terrifying grace, born of worlds where death was constant, inevitable and yet irrelevant to those who refused to succumb. Seer Vok could only watch, unable to process the scene in its entirety. For decades, he had studied the myths of humans, believed them exaggerated tales of a species lucky enough to survive hostile worlds. But what he saw now shattered every assumption. These were not lucky survivors. These were hunters, calculators, killers honed by centuries of death, evolution, and relentless adaptation. And they were here to protect, not destroy. Vok whispered, "The legends, they are real." Grayson's voice cut through the chaos again. "Remember your priorities. Protect life where it can be saved. Eliminate threats where it cannot." The Conclave realized, in that terrifying instant, that the Deathworlders were not simply soldiers. They were an unstoppable, terrifying force of nature. And the Void Swarm, for all its size and malevolence, was about to learn exactly what that meant. This was not a battle. It was a demonstration. A lesson in why humans were feared across countless worlds, even if no one had truly seen them until now. The battlefield unfolded with terrifying clarity. The Void Swarm surged forward like a black ocean of living machinery, organic warships pulsing with malice, titans stomping through forests, tearing mountains into rubble. Acid rains hissed against the plateau, and the ground itself seemed to shiver under the psychic roar of the swarm. Above, the Terran fleet moved with uncanny precision. Carriers tilted, unleashing waves of gunships that streaked through the sky like metallic predators, dodging tendrils of the swarm with uncanny anticipation. Rail cannons ignited in rapid succession, slamming shells through the thick black flesh of the enemy vessels. Plasma lances carved wide arcs, burning the air, turning the swarm into smoldering carcasses before they could reach the surface. On the plateau, Marines deployed with terrifying efficiency. Dropships struck the ground like meteorites, cratering the stone as armored soldiers emerged, weapons humming with energy. Titans charged, each as massive as a mountain, but each met with the unflinching courage of humans who had faced worlds designed to kill them. A Marine stepped forward, calm amid the chaos, weapon raised against a swarm behemoth that had already crushed half the plateau. She fired. The creature's limbs melted under the concentrated beam, and it fell with a thunderous crash, shaking the earth. Vok could barely breathe. Every second brought more horror and awe. The swarm was enormous, relentless, and intelligent, but the humans were utterly unstoppable. In orbit, the Horizon Breaker pivoted with deliberate precision, its massive main cannon charging. Energy surged along its hull, and the beam began to glow a blinding, star-bright lance capable of slicing through planets. "Target primary cluster," Grayson ordered. The cannon discharged, a vertical flare of light so intense that for a heartbeat, day seemed to overtake night. Half the swarm fleet evaporated instantly in a blast of energy so pure that nothing living could survive it. The shockwave flattened mountains, erased forests, and left the plateau eerily silent except for the hiss of cooling debris. Yet the humans did not pause. They reloaded, recalibrated, and continued their advance. Dropships unleashed new waves of Marines. Gunships danced through the sky like living predators. The remaining Titans fell one by one, every strike precise, every movement deliberate, every Marine synchronized with lethal intent. The battle lasted 14 minutes. 14 minutes in which an entire invasion fleet, a swarm that had devoured 12 worlds without mercy, was annihilated. Not a single Terran ship was lost. Not a single Marine faltered. The humans had emerged unscathed, a perfect, terrifying force of nature, their presence alone bending the battlefield to their will. Vok and the remaining Conclave members watched in stunned silence. Their rituals, their prayers, their desperate summoning it had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. But it had also revealed a truth they had only whispered about in fear. The humans of the Deathworld were legends, not myths, not tales, not lucky survivors. They were the ultimate hunters. The Void Swarm, the galaxy's most feared biological menace, lay broken at their feet. And the Conclave understood, in that moment, that the Deathworlders did not merely survive, they dominated. Vok's voice shook as he addressed the Admiral's comm window. "Admiral Grayson, you have saved us. All of us. The Conclave cannot repay you." Grayson cut him off, her tone calm, yet edged with the authority of someone who had faced death 1,000 times. "You didn't summon soldiers, Sci-Fi. You summoned humans. And humans don't ignore a call for help." The message was simple, yet it resonated through the ruins of the battlefield. Humanity had arrived, and they had done what no other species could. The Conclave would remember this day for all time, not just as a victory, but as a revelation. When Deathworlders arrived, the galaxy learned that survival was only the beginning. The humans had come to save, and the universe had been reminded that they did so with fire, fury, and absolute perfection. The plateau was quiet now, though the ground still quivered under the aftershocks of human weaponry. Smoke rose in pale ribbons from the scorched forest, and jagged craters pocked the once sacred ritual site. The Carthun conclave huddled together, trembling, their minds struggling to comprehend what had just unfolded. They had called for champions, but what had arrived was a storm of legends, a force of nature shaped on a world that refused to yield even to itself. Admiral Leona Grayson stood aboard the Horizon Breaker, her armor scratched and scorched but intact, her helmet retracted, revealing a face etched with lines of discipline and years of surviving worlds, designed to kill every human who dared step on them. Her eyes, calm yet sharp, swept across the plateau. Behind her, the fleet remained in formation, weapons still primed, sensors scanning for any sign that the swarm might yet return. Seer Volk approached, his claws still trembling, voice almost a whisper. "Admiral, you saved us. All of us. The Conclave cannot repay you, nor can we even imagine the power we have witnessed." Grayson shook her head slowly, her expression a mixture of weariness and faint humor. "Consider it repaid the moment you opened the beacon. We didn't come for glory. We came because someone needed help. That's what humans do." The Carthuan had studied the myths, had feared the stories told in hushed voices of a species that thrived where death itself ruled. Yet none of their legends had prepared them for this reality. Humans were not simply survivors. They were predators, honed by worlds that demanded perfection, honed by death itself. Volk dared to ask, almost too softly to be heard, "Why? Why do you not conquer? Why do you not take worlds while you possess such power?" Grayson's gaze hardened, piercing him with the quiet authority of a predator and protector combined. "Because we're not monsters. We fight to survive, yes. We fight to protect, yes. But taking what does not belong to us, that's not strength. That's weakness. We've seen empires rise and fall because of greed, arrogance, and fear. We choose a different path. The galaxy is large, and there's enough for those who earn it without killing what they do not need to kill." The Carthuan listened, awestruck. For decades, they had believed the human stories were exaggerations, tales to scare children or impress neighboring worlds. Now they understood. Humans were the living embodiment of survival and discipline, tempered on Deathworlds, tested by the universe itself, and still capable of mercy. Above them, the Terran fleet adjusted its formation, engines flaring in a silent warning to any lurking predator. Dropships returned to carriers, and weapon systems powered down. Yet every sensor remained alert, every marine poised to strike if the slightest threat appeared. Seer Thyrix, who had doubted the legends from the start, finally whispered, "They are gods among species, and yet they are not cruel." Grayson allowed herself a brief, humorless smile. "Legends only exist because the living remember them. Myths grow because the fearful tell them. We're neither gods nor myths. We're just humans, Deathworlders. And if anyone calls for help, we come whether you're ready for it or not." The conclave bowed again, this time in understanding, respect, and awe. They had summoned not mere champions, not even a fleet of soldiers, but a living force that embodied the impossible, survival, adaptability, and relentless courage. The plateau fell silent, The only sounds now the settling dust and the hum of returning engines. And as the Carthwan watched, the humans Deathworlders forged in fire, tempered by the harshest worlds, prepared to depart. They left a lesson that would echo through the galaxy for generations. When humans arrived, they brought fire. When humans fought, they brought fury. And when humans protected, the universe itself learned to fear the quiet certainty that came with them. The Conclave would never forget. You do not summon humans lightly. You do not call Deathworlders by accident. And when they arrive, you pray that it is to save you, not to judge you. For humans, even in mercy, were absolute.